the shadow on the moon at night, filling your dreams to the brim with fright.
For the past 4 years, I've worked as a funeral director and embalmer at 2 different locations in separate buildings. Names omitted for privacy reasons and to keep intact my anonymity. In my line of work, of course, the nature of the work would be unsettling to most, especially the aspect of the tasks completed on the decedents themselves. As an embalmer, I've performed some gruesome actions, all for the betterment of someone's loved one's appearance and their expectations during the viewing during the visitation period. I'm telling you all of this to set the stage that I'm not scared easily from the unsettling, and I have a rock-solid stomach that could handle any smell or sight that we come across, that any embalmer will see at some point. As there are 2 locations that I frequently visit for my work, I'll be labeling them 1 and 2, just for simplicity's sake. First location. Coming back from a death call at a hospital at 2 a.m. into a 130-year-old funeral home with a decedent in the back of the van seems creepy enough to most, but it's the reality that most people don't realize is a fairly common occurrence. My first major encounter happened sometime after I arrived to the funeral home and started my normal embalming procedures. During the procedures, of course, I'm not paying extreme attention to my surroundings of the room, but I had noticed a nuisance of chill that wasn't normal, as I had embalmed many times before and never noticed nothing like it. I just shrugged it off and continued on. After I'd completed the job, I walked into the casket showroom, which is directly next to the embalming room, and flipped on the lights. In the corner, next to the end of 2 caskets, was a black mist that seemed to dissipate into the corner of the room. Plain as day, in the fully lit room, I was absolutely rocked by this realization that me and the decedent were not alone in the funeral home. Someone had been watching me the entire time. The second occurrence was when I was leaving one night around 11 p.m. after a long day of death calls and funerals. Every evening when we leave, we go from room to room and make sure every light is off to save on the electric bill. I had sat down in my car and looked up into one of the rooms on the 2nd level and noticed a lamp was on. I decided to not go back in and to get it in the morning. No big deal, right? Yeah, I wish. The specific room was the location manager's office, and it looked as if the light was emanating from the middle of the room. Just some context, the lamp in question was originally owned by the location manager's wife, who was passed, and also went through the same funeral home he worked at. He had brought it from home to use there in the office because it was no longer needed at his house. That next day I went up there to check on the room and turned the lamp off. Only problem was that the lamp emanating the light the night before was sitting in the middle of his desk, not even plugged in. I was the first employee there that morning, and no one had been there during the night for any reason at all. Also, when seeing the lamp on the night before, I know the funeral home was empty because I was the last person to leave. Now, these 2 occurrences aren't alone, but they are the most notable, because I can't explain them away. There are several hundred times I've felt watched or something seems to move in the corner of my eye. There has also been many times where I hear someone whisper, "Hello," or "Hey," in my ear. They are so numerous that it's hard to keep when or how they happened straight. But I guess that's just baggage with the job. Second location. Context. At this location, I actually lived in the top of the funeral home for a period of 6 to 8 months, because free room and board in a fully furnished apartment, and the ease of being able to just wake up and clock in the morning without even having to drive anywhere is a luxury most people don't think about. The first happening was subtle, but no subtle moment. A few weeks into my initial move into the apartment upstairs of the funeral home, I was sleeping in my room upstairs and was awoken by the sounds of the stairs creaking, as if someone was walking up them. It was 1 a.m., and I knew no one was there but me. Because usually when a death call happens, I know about them because I am called by my answering service to go get them. At this point, I am frozen in place. Like, who in the hell would be there at this time of night without me knowing about it? All of the doors are locked to enter the funeral home, and so is my bedroom door. The freezing continues until whatever is outside my door comes to it and knocks twice. I say nothing. After several moments of complete silence, the creaking starts again, but back down the stairwell. I sat, totally silent, the rest of the night, and I couldn't sleep at all. Nothing else happened, but I was absolutely rattled by that experience. Whatever that was, knew I was up there, and I didn't like that thought at all. I had no other choice but to continue to live there because my financial position at the time, I couldn't really afford anything else. My second experience there was in the evening as well. I was eating a TV dinner in my kitchen there in the apartment. I looked up for my food and watched a doorknob turn, and the door opened as if someone just walked through and shut it back. I just sat, mouth agape, and was totally flabbergasted. I was also there alone that night as well. No breezes or change in air pressure due to other door closures could force the door to open and shut like it did that night. Finally, and the most recent. Yesterday I was sitting on the couch downstairs on break, during the middle of the day. I was alone again. Context: if there's nothing going on as far as funerals or arrangement conferences on the weekends, we keep the doors locked and the lights off. I rose from the couch and was walking into the main hall of the funeral home, and I noticed a man standing in the doors to the funeral chapel. I said aloud to him, "Hey, you." He didn't turn or say anything. He just walked away from me and turned the corner. I followed him into the chapel to try and get his attention. I rounded that same corner and found absolutely nothing. By this time I was freaking out. The man was wearing a navy blue pinstripe suit with a white collared button-up, grey slicked back hair, and was about the same height as me. He was an older fellow and was a little hunched over in the back. For reference, I'm 6'2". I immediately called the manager of the funeral home, same as the other location, and told him what had happened and described the man. He told me that I had probably seen his old manager, who had also lived in the apartment that I did currently several years ago. Everything made sense in that moment. Here are some more experiences from the funeral homes I worked at. So, same as the original post. First location and the second location. First location. When I just started the new job, I also had joined into the gym just a block away from the funeral home. The way the town is set up, I was able to see the funeral home from the window of the gym, and after sets, I would often do so, just kinda staring at the funeral home. One particular evening, after picking a decedent up and embalming around midday, I was sitting in the front of the gym. just looking out onto the street, and I looked up to notice that the attic light was on. There is a window leading into the attic as well. That's how I was able to see the light on. I called my manager, asking him why the light was on because neither of us had been up there that day. I knew he wasn't there, and of course I wasn't. Ending the phone call, we both kinda just shrugged it off. Once we ended that phone call, my eyes fell onto the light again. I watched as the light turned off almost perfectly, as if someone was listening to me talk about it in a sense. Mind you, me and my manager are the only ones who ever go up there in the first place, and the only person there at the time of the occurrence was the decedent we had picked up that day. She was embalmed during that work day, so there was no way she woke up or anything like that. Second location. There were several times where I laid in bed at nights in the apartment atop that funeral home and could have sworn up and down I heard a crowd of people downstairs, like a full-blown visitation was going on. Only problem was, there wasn't a visitation happening because I would have been working it if there was one. Not even half a year ago, I just had one of the freakiest paranormal experiences I've had in a while. To give you some backstory, I live in an apartment attached to a funeral home. I'm a mortuary science student and I work for this funeral home to get experience while I'm in school to be a mortician. The funeral home happened to have a vacant apartment set privately in the back that I couldn't possibly turn down, as I moved away from home for this school and I needed an inexpensive place to live. Since the day I moved in, I've been having notable paranormal experiences. For a couple of months, I kept them to myself, not wanting to seem like I was feeding into some spooky funeral home stigma or making it up. But eventually, I was experiencing enough that I had to bring it up to a coworker of mine, and she confirmed that she and a few other employees had seen and heard the same things I have. That being said, it's not news to any of us that the place is haunted, if that's what you want to call it. Now, onto my story. Today, after I got home from classes and went home, I was feeling extremely uneasy. My apartment felt extra dark and I felt sort of jumpy. I was standing in my bathroom, braiding my hair, and one of my co-workers texted me. She said she had a weird feeling and asks me to go check the front doors of the funeral home to make sure they are locked. I read her text as I braided my hair, and her next message pops up. I'm 99% sure I locked it, but I have a nagging feeling about something. I told her I'd go check. I finished braiding my hair and slipped on my shoes and walked to the door in my apartment that opens up into the back of the funeral home. The lights are off, and I don't bother turning them on, as the motion sensors in the hallway always kick on by themselves. I made my way to the front lobby, which was dark not counting the lights through the front door windows. I walked to the front doors and pushed. Sure enough, both unlocked. At that moment, I had a really heavy feeling, like someone was behind me or watching me. I kept turning around to look, but standing by the light at the doors and looking into the dark lobby made it almost impossible to see. I hurried up and locked the doors and made my way back through the lobby. As I was about to enter the hallway, I hear a little girl giggling. I stopped dead in my tracks for a moment, just at the end of her giggling. It sounded like it was coming from behind the door, not 6 feet away from me. I got chills on my entire body and hightailed it back into the lit hallway and into my doorway. I locked the door behind me and immediately heard a loud bang from a room in the funeral home. I have no idea what it was, but it was loud, and I'm not about to go and check. As I was standing there shitting my pants, I texted my coworker back saying The doors were both unlocked. As I'm typing her my story of what happened, she says, "I don't know, man. I've been getting weird vibes in there all day. I think maybe it's safe to say the spirits in here are extra active today." It had been a few weeks since I've had anything too strange happen, but now I'm extremely on edge. There are 2 spirits that myself as well as 3 other co-workers have all seen. One is of a little girl. She looks maybe 80 years old. She's slightly taller than average, and she shows herself so briefly, you wonder if you ever saw it. I would almost say she looks 10, but when we hear her giggle, she sounds like a young girl of maybe 6 years old. The other is a tall shadow-like man who wears a long black coat and a black hat. He is an entirely different story though. I'm chilled right now. Some days in here feel weirder than others, and tonight feels like the kind where I probably won't get any sleep. I feel so anxious right now. Usually these things happen in waves, so I feel like I'm just waiting for the next thing to happen. Thanks for listening. A lot of people have asked that I share more of my experiences here at the funeral home and in my apartment, so I figured I'd add them here and just start from the beginning. The day I moved in, I was trying to clean and dust everything as I unpacked. I was listening to music and polishing one of my end tables when something caught my eye. I glanced up towards my hallway where the bathroom is located and briefly saw what looked like a little girl peeking at me from behind the door frame. I did a double take and she was gone. I paused my music and kind of stood there with a stupid look on my face, I'm guessing. I heard a soft rustling noise from the bathroom, like the sound of maybe the shower curtain. I walked over to the bathroom and peeked in, but of course, there was nothing there. My first few nights there were pretty normal. Some strange noises like bumps on the wall, knocking, brushing noises, but I attributed it all to the fact that I was in a new place and those noises were probably normal for the building. One night I was taking a shower, minding my own business, when I felt an ice-cold air on my back. I didn't have the air on at this time, and there are no windows in my bathroom that could cause a draft. I immediately felt uneasy and peeked out behind my shower curtain to see that everything was normal. I went back to showering and tried to pretend nothing happened. As I was facing the water, my towel that was draped up over the curtain rod fell to the floor. I jumped and whipped around and quickly peeked behind the curtain again. Nothing. I was pretty shaken now, and I picked up my towel and draped it back over the rod. I tried to hurry up and finish my shower. Just as I was about to turn off the water, I hear my bathroom door click. In absolute fear and panic, and ready to nakedly fight someone, I ripped open the curtain to see the door slowly opening. I stood there and watched until it slowly reached the doorstop. I said something along the lines of, "Oh my fucking god," through tears, and fumbled for my towel and ran out of my bathroom. I got dressed and left for the rest of the day, and didn't come back until about 9 that night. Nothing happened the rest of that evening. After that, things were pretty quiet for a little while. Around 2 weeks later, it was a little after midnight and I was doing laundry. My washer and dryer are in the actual prep room where we embalm people, so to do laundry, I'd have to go into the back hallway of the funeral home. I had just put in a load of wash and was walking back to my apartment door at the very end of the hallway. I heard a door latch, kind of like the door was closed in the frame, but not latched, if that makes sense. It made me jump and I turned around, and at the end of the hallway, I saw the tall shadow man. Now, the owner of the funeral home was a big man who wears a long black coat in the winter and has this black cowboy hat sort of thing he wears. So for a split second, I thought maybe it was my boss who had come in for something, but it wasn't. It felt like a good 2 or 3 seconds that I watched him cross the end of the hallway, and he just disappeared into thin air. almost as I was focusing on him. I mentioned in my original story that there are motion sensor lights in the hallway, and these lights were all on during this encounter. He was big and tall. He had a hat on similar to the one my boss wears, and was black from top to bottom, like a really opaque shadow. Needless to say, I almost shit my pants. I bolted back into my apartment and locked the door. I was so scared, and in so much disbelief, I was actually lightheaded and had to sit down. I still don't mention him or the little girl I saw to anyone I work with. One day when I came home from class, I noticed my microwave time had changed to military time. I didn't think anything of it, and I messed with the settings, switching it back. The next night, I was working, cleaning one of the lounges, and I noticed that the time on the microwave in there was on military time too. At that point, I honestly figured that maybe there was a power outage that day, and when the microwaves kicked back on, they just went wonky and switched to military time. This was until the next day, which was my day off. I slept in and lounged in my bed for like an hour, and one of my best friends called me. We had been talking for about 20 minutes, and I was like, alright, I should probably get up and do something. I glanced to see what time it is, and my alarm clock was on military time. My alarm clock is a cheap, battery-operated alarm that doesn't even plug into a wall. I've had it for about 4 years and had never seen it switch to military time. I went silent on the phone and stared at the clock, trying to find some sort of logical explanation. The microwaves kind of made sense at first, but then, with my alarm clock, I couldn't shake the feeling it meant something. Not long after that is when things got considerably spookier. Probably about 3 days later, I was coming back home one afternoon from classes. I came right in and threw my keys and my purse on the kitchen table, and then turned my back to the table to plug the sink and start running water to do my dishes. My dishes had been piling up. Swore to myself I'd do them first thing when I got home. I was letting the sink fill and turned to get my keys and purse from the kitchen table and put them on the end table by my door, which is where I always place them so I don't forget them when I'm running out the door on a 3 a.m. death call. My purse was there, but my keys were not. I had just come in and threw them on the table. It took a few seconds to get the sink ready, so they didn't get up and walk away in that short amount of time. Bewildered, I started looking under the table, on the floor, patting my pockets, trying to find my keys. I had just put them there. Frustrated, I go to plop down on my couch and ponder if I'm going crazy. I have a heavy quilt on my couch. I like my place chilly. I have a heavy quilt on my couch, and when I went to lift it and sit down, there were my keys. I didn't go anywhere near my couch when I came in. I'm 100% positive I put my keys on the table next to my purse when I came in, and there was no reason they'd be under the quilt. But that wasn't the weirdest part. On my keyring, I have my parents' house key and my car key on the main key rings, and a second key ring is attached to that one with my apartment door keys on it. The key ring with the apartment keys on it was stretched and bent, as if someone tried to rip the key straight off the other one. The key rings aren't flimsy bendy ones either. I could hardly open them enough to lock the key rings together when I put them on. It would have taken serious force to completely pull open the keyring like that. Anyways, my stomach dropped through my asshole when I saw my keys there all fucked up under the blanket. I almost didn't believe if I was seeing it all correctly, and I felt a little crazy. At this point, I was feeling like I should at least vent to someone about what was going on. A night or two after that, I was working a visitation with an older woman who has worked for my boss for a long time. She's my favorite coworker as she's easy to talk to and reminds me of my grandma or something. Anyways, she asked me how I was getting settled into the apartment and if I was enjoying it. I told her how much I loved my apartment, but there were some weird things that don't make sense. She asked what I meant, and I honestly didn't even want to say it because I didn't want her to think I was crazy or bullshitting her. After my hesitation, I just asked if she thought the funeral home was haunted. She explained to me that she had had some strange experiences here as well as a couple of others I work with. They've all heard loud screaming and moaning from time to time in the prep room. They'd heard giggling, unexplained doors opening and slamming, etc. What upset me most was that she told me about a tall black man with a hat she had seen in the back hallway a couple of times. At that point, I word vomited and told her everything that had happened since I moved in. That was the night that I felt like it was confirmed to me that there was something or some things here. I sort of wanted to vomit, I was so scared. But at least I knew I wasn't crazy. A few weeks after that, nothing huge happened. I would always hear strange noises at night. It's not uncommon to hear a door open and close by itself somewhere in a funeral home. I've also heard people talking, hear cots sliding around on the floor, and the same moans and screams my co-workers have all heard. This has become the most normal to me, so although it's freaky, it wasn't bothering me directly, and I could live with that, at least for a little while. Once again, things picked back up one day when I was in my bedroom putting clothes away. I was sitting on my floor, folding a mountain of laundry, when I heard a loud, clear as day sound of a man clear his throat in my living room. The kind of that you do to get someone's attention. It was so clear and real, I didn't even think ghost. I was confused for a moment, thinking maybe my boss had come in to speak to me, but surely he'd knock. Nobody ever would just walk in here. I hopped up and stepped into my living room. Nobody there. I peered around the corner to see if anyone was in my bathroom. No one. The realization that I was alone set in, and my stomach sort of dropped. But honestly, I was so used to so much activity that after a few minutes of pacing around in disbelief, I shook it off and went back to folding laundry. In the most recent weeks, the most I've experienced are the normal sounds and voices and bumps in the night I always hear. One night, a couple of random lights and my TV all shut off at once, unexpectedly, and I had to go into the funeral home utility room to flip the switches in the breaker box. I noticed that when I have someone over and start telling them about the spirits, the lights or TV will shut off. A friend of mine has experienced this with me on 3 different occasions. That pretty much catches me up to the original story I posted here. It's been an absolute ride being here. Some nights it's nothing, and some nights I sleep with the blankets over my head. I really appreciate you all taking the time to listen. Hello watchers and listeners, thank you so much for watching. A huge thank you to all the Reddit users who kindly allowed me to use their stories. I couldn't do this without you. And of course, thank you to all of those who continue to support me. I truly do appreciate it so much. And remember,
Papa loves you.